Hi, everyone. This is my first time telling that to somebody, but I really need to get something off my chest. I've been a lurker for a while, listening other people's stories, and I'd often think, wow, that's tough. But I never imagined I'd be the one seeking advice for something like this. Life sure has a way of blindsiding you, doesn't it? So, here's my story. I'm Mark, living in Florida with my wife, Kate. We've been married for 9 years, a marriage I always thought was solid and happy. We have two amazing kids, Emma, who's 7, and Ben, who just turned 5. They're the kind of kids who light up a room, and I'd do anything for them. Life always felt good. Not perfect, but good enough that I'd wake up most days feeling lucky. We live in a cozy home near Jacksonville, close to the coast. It's nothing extravagant, but it's ours. We have this little screened in porch where we'd sip coffee on weekends while watching the kids play in the yard. Those mornings were my favorite, calm, peaceful, just us. I manage a local logistics company, and it keeps me busy without overwhelming me. Kate's a wedding planner, and she's incredible at it. She has this uncanny knack for organizing chaos, and her clients adore her. She's outgoing, funny, and effortlessly charismatic, the type of person who turns strangers into friends. Meanwhile, I'm more of the behind the scenes type, happier on the porch with a beer than mingling at a party. Our days followed a predictable, comforting routine. I'd wake up early to tackle work emails before the house got noisy. Kate would be in the kitchen with the kids, juggling breakfast and school uniforms. It was your typical family chaos: missing shoes, forgotten lunches, and cereal meltdowns. But somehow we managed, and I'd leave for work with a kiss and a have a great day. Evenings were my favorite. We'd have dinner as a family, Kate whipping up meals like it was nothing. After the kids were in bed, it was just us, watching a show, talking about our day, or just sitting quietly, scrolling through our phones. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt real, solid, like we were a team. To the outside world, we probably looked like the perfect couple. Honestly, I thought we were. Sure, we had our arguments about money, chores, or whose turn it was to handle Ben's tantrum, but we always worked through them. Or at least, I thought we did. Looking back, I wonder if there were signs I missed. Subtle things like Kate spending more time on her phone or brushing off conversations about our future. When you're in the thick of life, you don't always notice the cracks. You just keep going, assuming everything's fine. If I knew then what I know now, and maybe I could have done something differently. Maybe I could have stopped this before it started, or maybe it was too late all along and I just didn't see it. It started out small. So small I might not have noticed if I wasn't paying attention. Kate was always someone who cared about her appearance. Fashion was her thing, and looking good just seemed like part of who she was. But gradually, I noticed her putting in more effort. Suddenly, there were new dresses in her closet, fancy ones, with price tags that made me blink. Then came the perfumes, these exotic scents I'd never smelled on her before. She started wearing makeup more often, even when there didn't seem to be a reason. I remember teasing her once, saying, "Who are you getting all dressed up for?" She laughed it off, saying, "For myself. Is that so bad?" It wasn't bad, just different. Then came the evening gym sessions. Kate was never a fitness fanatic, but out of nowhere, she was hitting the gym 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. At first, I thought it was great. She said it helped her unwind after stressful days, and I was fully on board with that. But then she started coming home later and later. "I ran into a friend," she'd say, or "the trainer went over time." Once or twice, she walked in with freshly washed hair, even though she'd claim she was too exhausted to shower right after working out. Other small changes followed. She seemed distracted, spending a lot more time on her phone, smiling at whatever she was reading or texting. If I asked who she was talking to, her responses were vague: "Just a bride," or "You don't know them." She began pulling away from me in subtle ways. She didn't cuddle on the couch as much. When I tried to be intimate, she'd brush me off with, "I'm just so tired." Sure, her job was demanding, but something about it didn't feel right. The moment things really hit me was during one of her late night gym sessions. I was putting Emma and Ben to bed when Ben suddenly asked, "Why doesn't mommy eat dinner with us anymore?" It felt like a punch to the gut. I hadn't even realized how often she'd been missing dinner. Kate used to make a point of sitting down with us, no matter how busy she was. Now, it felt like she was always out, always somewhere else. I tried to ignore the growing doubts in my mind. I told myself she was just overwhelmed. Wedding planning wasn't easy, and she was handling a lot. But the excuses started feeling thinner and thinner. One evening, while cleaning up after dinner, I finally brought it up. Kate, are you okay? You've seemed different lately, distant. She didn't even look up, just kept loading the dishwasher. Different how? She asked. I don't know, I said, struggling to find the right words. You're out a lot. You don't talk to me as much. Even the kids are noticing. She sighed, closing the dishwasher door a bit harder than she needed to. Mark, I'm fine. It's just work. I've got a couple of high minimum brides and it's exhausting. Her answer should have reassured me, but it didn't. It felt too polished, too rehearsed. Still, I didn't want to push her. The last thing I wanted was to sound controlling or paranoid. So I dropped it, at least outwardly. But inside, something kept nagging at me. A small, relentless voice whispered that things weren't as fine as she said. That maybe, just maybe, Kate wasn't telling me the whole story. The moment everything started to unravel for me was during a lunch with my buddy Ryan. Ryan and I go way back. We've been friends since high school. Every couple of weeks, we meet up for lunch at this little taco spot we both love, catching up on work, sports, and family life. It was supposed to be just another normal afternoon. But then he said something that turned my entire world upside down. We were halfway through our meal when he casually mentioned, Hey, I saw Kate the other day, downtown, at that cafe near the marina. I didn't want to bother her. She looked like she was in the middle of something. I looked up from my plate, confused. The marina? When was this? Ryan shrugged. A couple days ago, Monday, I think. She was sitting outside with some guy. They seemed deep in conversation. For a second, my heart stopped. Monday. That was one of her gym nights. Did you recognize the guy? I asked, keeping my voice as steady as I could. He shook his head. No, but he looked kind of familiar. Tall, blonde, maybe mid-30s. I thought it was just a client or something. Yeah, I said quickly, forcing a laugh. Probably a groom or a vendor. You know how her job is. Ryan didn't think anything of it, but I couldn't focus on the rest of our conversation. My mind was racing. Why hadn't Kate mentioned this meeting? If it was work, why was it during a time when she was supposed to be at the gym? And who the hell was this blonde guy? When I got home that evening, I couldn't stop replaying Ryan's words in my head. Kate was her usual self, smiling, chatting with the kids, acting like everything was completely normal. Part of me wanted to confront her right then and there, but I held back. What if Ryan was wrong? What if it was nothing? And I ended up looking like some insecure idiot. I needed more information. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention to her. I tried to act natural, but it was hard not to notice the little things, like how she'd stop texting when I walked into the room, or how her stories about her day felt increasingly vague. Then there was the way she'd smile at her phone. Not the usual tired smile I was used to, but something softer, more private. Finally, one night as we were getting ready for bed, I decided to bring it up. Hey, Ryan mentioned he saw you downtown on Monday, I said casually, brushing my teeth. At that cafe near the marina. Who were you meeting? Kate froze for the briefest moment before recovering. Oh, that? It was just Jason, one of my clients. He's helping me with a venue contract. Jason. That was the first time I had ever heard his name. You didn't mention it, I said, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. She shrugged, slipping into bed. It wasn't a big deal. Just a quick coffee to go over some details. I didn't think it was worth bringing up. Her answer sounded reasonable enough, but something about her tone didn't sit right with me. She was too casual, too dismissive. Still, I let it go. I wasn't ready to press her, not yet. But now the name Jason was stuck in my head, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than she was letting on. I didn't know it at the time, but this was the first crack in the perfect picture I'd been clinging to for so long. After that conversation, I just couldn't let it go. Kate's explanation about Jason made sense on the surface. Something about it felt off. The way she brushed it off like it was no big deal felt almost calculated. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but the doubt was starting to gnaw at me. Uh, I decided to keep an eye on her just to see if anything else seemed unusual. Over the next couple of weeks, little things started to stand out. She was on her phone constantly, texting, scrolling, and even laughing softly at things she wouldn't explain. When I'd ask who she was talking to, her answers were always vague, just a client, or you wouldn't know them. Sometimes she'd flip her phone screen down when I walked into the room. At first, I told myself I was imagining it, but once you notice these things, they're impossible to ignore. Then there was the growing distance between us. Kate had always been strong willed and fiery, never afraid to stand her ground, but lately she wasn't even engaging. She'd give short, generic answers when I asked about her day, and anytime I tried to talk about us, she'd shut it down. "Mark, I'm exhausted," she'd say. "Can we not do this right now?" Our intimacy suffered too. She started making excuses, headaches, being too tired, needing to catch up on work. At first, I chalked it up to a rough patch, something every couple goes through. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. It wasn't just physical distance, it was emotional. One night, as she lay asleep beside me, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone. I know, it's a breach of trust. But at that point, I felt like I was losing my mind. The doubts were eating me alive, and I needed answers. Her phone was unlocked, sitting right there on the nightstand. I told myself that if there was nothing to find, no harm done. At first, everything looked normal. Most of her recent messages were with clients or friends, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But then I found a thread with someone named Jason. The messages weren't explicit, there was no talk of sex or anything blatantly incriminating, but they were too familiar, too warm. They talked about their days, shared inside jokes, and even had nicknames for each other. Jason called her Sunshine, and she replied with a winking emoji. In another message she wrote, "Can't wait to see you again." It wasn't definitive proof of an affair, but it was enough to make my stomach twist. I put the phone back on the nightstand and lay awake for the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. Was she cheating? Or was I reading too much into it? Either way, it was clear she was hiding something from me. The next day, I decided to find out for myself. I took an early lunch break and drove to the cafe near the marina. I didn't have a real plan, just a vague hope that I'd see something to give me clarity. Sure enough, as I sat there nursing a coffee, Kate walked in. She wasn't alone. Jason was with her. He was exactly how Ryan had described. Tall, blonde, mid-30s, dressed in a crisp button-up shirt that looked straight out of a catalog. They sat near the window, leaning in close and talking like they were the only two people in the world. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I didn't need to. The way she smiled at him. That wasn't the smile of someone meeting a client. It was the smile of someone meeting a lover. I left before they could see me, my heart pounding. This wasn't just paranoia. Something was happening, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. Now, I had to confront her, and I had to do it in a way that left no room for her to dodge the truth. The decision to confront her came faster than I anticipated. That Friday, I left work early, taking the afternoon off without telling anyone, not even Kate. I didn't call, didn't text. I wanted to catch her off guard. If she was hiding something, I wasn't about to give her time to prepare. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was already there. My chest felt tight as I unlocked the front door, trying to brace myself for whatever I might find. The house was quiet, eerily so, but as I walked down the hall toward our bedroom, I heard voices. One of them was Kate's. The other was Jason's. My mind went blank. Everything felt like it was happening in slow motion. I opened the bedroom door without thinking, and there they were. Kate and Jason, tangled in our sheets. My sheets. For a second, they didn't even realize I was there. But when they did, chaos erupted. Jason scrambled to grab his clothes, stammering something about how this isn't what it looks like. Kate jumped out of bed, clutching the blanket to her chest, her eyes wide. "Mark, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at work." "What am I doing here?" I shouted, my voice cracking with fury. "What the hell are you doing with him?" Jason held out his hands, trying to act like some kind of mediator. Look, man, I didn't know. Before he could finish, my fist connected with his jaw. I didn't even realize I'd moved until I saw him stumble back, tripping over the bedside table and crashing to the floor. Kate screamed, grabbing my arm and pulling me back. Stop it, Mark. You're going to hurt him. Good, I yelled, shaking her off. He deserves it. And so do you. Jason scrambled to his feet, his hands still raised in surrender. I'm leaving, he muttered, grabbing his shirt off the floor. He didn't even try to defend himself. Just like that, he was out the door, leaving me and Kate alone in the aftermath. For a moment, we just stood there, the room heavy with silence. Then Kate broke it, her voice trembling. Mark, I can explain. I let out a bitter laugh. Explain? You think you can explain this? I just caught you in bed with another man, Kate. What the hell is there to explain? It's not what you think, she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. Jason and I, it's not about sex, it's emotional. I've been feeling so empty, and I didn't know how to talk to you about it. He listens. Bullshit, I snapped. If it's just emotional, then why was he in our bed? Why were you sneaking around, lying to me, lying to our kids? She didn't have an answer for that. Instead, she broke down, covering her face with her hands as she started sobbing. I'm sorry, Mark. I never wanted to hurt you. Her apology only fueled my anger. You didn't want to hurt me? Then what the hell did you think was going to happen, Kate? Did you think I wouldn't find out? Or did you just not care? I didn't wait for her to answer. I grabbed my keys and stormed out, slamming the door behind me. I needed air, space, anything to keep myself from completely losing it. I spent the night at a friend's place, pacing the floor and replaying the scene over and over in my head. Kate's words echoed like a bad song on repeat. It's emotional. I wanted to believe it was just an excuse, something she threw out to soften the blow, but the image of her and Jason in our bed told a different story. The next morning I went home. I wasn't ready to forgive her, not even close, but we needed to talk, if only for the kids' sake. When I walked in, Kate was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She looked like she hadn't slept at all. Mark, she said quietly as I sat down across from her, I know I messed up. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to let me explain. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, waiting for her to continue. She took a shaky breath and started talking. She told me how she'd been feeling trapped in our marriage, lost in the endless cycle of work, kids, and routine, how Jason had started as a client, a groom she worked with on a wedding last year. She said they'd clicked and had been talking for months, but it was just emotional at first. She claimed she'd leaned on him because she didn't feel like she could talk to me. But then it crossed the line, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It happened a few times. I don't know what I was thinking. I was selfish, stupid. Was it worth it, I asked, my voice cold and detached. Throwing away everything we've built for some fling? She didn't answer. She just stared at the table, tears streaming down her face. Then I asked the question that had been nagging at me since I first heard Jason's name. How does he know Emma and Ben? Her head snapped up, her face pale. What are you talking about? Ryan said he saw you with Jason downtown, I said, my voice steady but laced with anger. And he mentioned Jason seemed familiar. Why's that, Kate? How does Jason know our family? She hesitated, and in that moment I knew there was more to the story. Mark, I swear, it wasn't intentional, she said quickly, her words tumbling over each other. Jason volunteers at the community center. He runs a basketball clinic, and Emma and Ben have been there a few times. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. Jason had been around my kids. The man who had been sleeping with my wife was also part of my children's lives. The thought made my blood boil. You let him near our kids? I said, my voice rising with anger. You let the guy you've been screwing around with spend time with Emma and Ben? What the hell is wrong with you, Kate? It wasn't like that, she cried, her voice breaking. I didn't plan it. It just happened. And I never let him get too close. I swear. I pushed back from the table, unable to look at her. This wasn't just about me anymore. Jason hadn't just inserted himself into my marriage. He'd become a part of my family's life. And Kate had let it happen. The betrayal ran even deeper now. It wasn't just about me. She'd failed to protect our kids from the fallout of her choices. Mark, please, she said, her voice desperate. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to fix this. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. Just don't give up on us. I wanted to scream, to break something, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she'd caused. But I couldn't let myself lose control. I had to figure out how to protect them from this mess. We're done talking for now, I said, my voice flat. I need space. And you need to figure out how you're going to explain this to Emma and Ben, because they deserve better than this. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving her sobbing at the table. I didn't know what the next step was yet, but one thing was certain. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The days that followed felt like I was moving through a thick fog. My mind wouldn't stop replaying the betrayal, Kate's excuses, her words, and the image of Jason sitting at that basketball clinic with my kids. Part of me wanted to throw her stuff out onto the lawn and end it right there. But then I'd think about Emma and Ben. They didn't deserve to have their world ripped apart overnight. During that time, Kate moved cautiously around me. She kept her distance, but it was clear she wanted to talk. Eventually, I agreed. If nothing else, I needed to try and make sense of everything. We sat down one night after the kids had gone to bed. The house was unnervingly quiet, every little sound amplifying the tension between us. Kate looked like a shadow of herself, her usual confident, polished appearance replaced by someone barely holding it together. For a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I need to know everything, I said, breaking the silence. No more half-truths, no more excuses. If you want even a chance at fixing this, you have to be completely honest. She nodded, wiping at her eyes. Okay, she whispered. I'll tell you everything. She started from the beginning, explaining how she met Jason during a wedding she'd been planning. He'd been charming, attentive, someone who seemed genuinely interested in her. At first, it was innocent enough. Friendly conversations, light texts, jokes about work. But then it escalated. She started confiding in him about our marriage, about how she felt like we were drifting apart. It felt good to be seen, she said, her voice trembling. To feel like someone was paying attention to me. Her words cut deep, but I let her continue. She admitted that the relationship had turned physical a few months ago, not long after she started the evening workouts. The gym had been a convenient cover. Jason lived nearby, and they would meet whenever they could. She insisted it wasn't about love, claiming she didn't have feelings for him. It wasn't about leaving you, she said. I felt lost, Mark, and he was there. I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my anger in check. Lost? You were lost, so you decided to blow up your marriage and risk your family for what? A cheap thrill? She didn't respond, just stared down at the floor. I pressed on. And Jason, was he lost too, or was he just a convenient excuse for you to cross the line? She hesitated, guilt etched all over her face. Jason's divorced, she said quietly. His wife cheated on him, I think. I think we were both just trying to fill a void. Her words hit me like a slap. Jason had been through this kind of pain before, yet he had no problem stepping into someone else's marriage. The irony would have been laughable if it weren't so devastating. Do you even realize how much damage you've done? I asked, my voice trembling. You didn't just betray me, Kate. You let him into our kids' lives. Do you understand what kind of example that sets for them? Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. I know I've ruined everything, Mark. I hate myself for it, but I want to make it right. Please, just tell me how. I didn't have an answer. At that moment, I wasn't sure there was anything she could do to fix it. All I knew was that I couldn't keep living under the same roof, pretending things were okay. We need space, I said finally, my voice flat. You need to leave. Stay with your sister, your parents, I don't care where. But I can't do this right now. She started to protest, but I held up my hand to stop her. This isn't a discussion, Kate. I need time to think. And you need to figure out if you're sorry for what you've done, or just sorry you got caught. That night, she packed a bag and left. The kids were too young to fully understand what was happening, so I told them Mommy was visiting Aunt Lisa for a little while. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. How do you explain something like this to a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old? The house felt hollow and eerily quiet without her there. But for the first time in days, I had room to breathe. I didn't know if I could forgive her or if I even wanted to. All I knew was that I had decisions to make, and those decisions would change my life and my family's forever. The days after Kate moved out felt surreal. The house was emptier, quieter, even with Emma and Ben running around. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to text her about dinner plans, something funny the kid said, or even just to check in, only to stop, remembering why she wasn't there. It was a strange kind of loneliness, missing someone you weren't even sure you wanted back. I spent a lot of time in my own head, thinking about everything, the life we'd built, the promises we made, and whether something like this could ever be repaired. I wasn't naive. Forgiveness wasn't just about saying the words. It was a process, one that required trust. And trust? That felt shattered beyond repair. To her credit, Kate kept trying. She texted every day, asking about the kids, apologizing, and promising to do whatever it took to fix things. I'll go to therapy, one of her messages said. Couples counseling, individual, whatever you want. Just please give me a chance to prove I can change. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because I wasn't sure I believed her. And then there was Jason. He lingered in my thoughts. The way he'd been in my house, my bed, and worst of all, around my kids. I wanted to hate him, to blame him for everything. But deep down, I knew the real betrayal wasn't his. It was Kate's. He was just the symptom of something broken in our marriage, something I hadn't even realized was wrong. About 2 weeks after Kate left, I decided to take her up on one of her offers. Let's talk, I texted. But it has to be honest, no bullshit. I want the whole truth. We met at a park near her sister's house. She looked different, tired, almost frail, like the weight of everything was finally hitting her. We sat on a bench while the kids played in the distance, and I laid it all out. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said, my voice trembling. I don't know if I even want to try. What you did, it broke something in me, Kate. Something I don't think can ever be fixed. Her eyes filled with tears, but for once she didn't interrupt. She just listened. I need to know, I continued. If I give you another chance, how do I know you won't do this again? How do I know you're not just sorry because you got caught? She wiped her tears, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I can't change what I've done, Mark. I wish I could, but I can't. All I can do is show you day by day that I'm serious about fixing this. I've already started seeing a therapist. And if you need space, I'll give you space. But please know, I love you. I love our family, and I'll do whatever it takes to prove that. Her words sounded sincere, but I couldn't ignore the voice in my head whispering, she fooled you once. What makes you think she won't do it again? After a long silence, I said, I need time. I don't want to make a decision I'll regret, one way or the other. She nodded, and for once, she didn't push. Take all the time you need, she said softly. Just, please, don't shut me out completely. For the next few weeks, we lived in a strange limbo. Kate stayed with her sister while I focused on the kids. I didn't tell them the whole truth, but I tried to keep things as normal as possible. Emma especially asked about Mommy almost every day, her confusion written all over her little face. One night, as I tucked her in, she asked, Why isn't Mommy coming home? Mommy's working on some things, I told her gently, but she loves you very much. So do I. I know, Emma whispered, hugging her stuffed bunny. I just want her to come home. Her words stayed with me long after she fell asleep. I wanted to give my kids the family they deserved, but at what cost? Could I ever trust Kate again? And even if I could, would it ever feel the same? My wife and I were at a concert. A month passed, and I still hadn't made a decision. Part of me wanted to move forward, whether that meant rebuilding with Kate or walking away for good, but every time I thought I had an answer, doubts crept in. Forgiveness felt like an uphill climb, but letting go felt like turning my back on everything we'd built together. Kate seemed determined to prove herself. She sent me updates about her therapy sessions, sharing insights about why she'd done what she did and how she was working to change. I appreciated her effort, but I couldn't help wondering if it was too little too late. Then one day, she asked if she could come home. Not permanently, just for dinner with the kids. She said she wanted to start rebuilding trust and thought it would be good for Emma and Ben to see us together. Reluctantly, I agreed. That evening, she arrived with takeout from our favorite Thai place and a nervous smile. The kids lit up as soon as she walked through the door, running into her arms like nothing had ever changed. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the life we used to have, the one I'd been holding on to in my mind. But as the evening went on, the tension between us was impossible to ignore. After the kids were in bed, we sat down in the living room. She turned to me, her expression serious. "Mark, I know this hasn't been easy for you, and I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking for one anyway. Not just for me, but for us, for our family." I stared at her, searching for the right words. "Kate, I want to believe you," I said finally. "I want to believe that we can fix this. But every time I look at you, all I see is Jason. All I see is the lies. How do we come back from that?" She leaned forward, her eyes brimming with tears. "We take it one day at a time," she said. "I know I've destroyed your trust, and I know it'll take a long time to rebuild. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Therapy, counseling, complete transparency, whatever you need. Just please, don't give up on us." Her words hung in the air, heavy with desperation and sincerity. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to give her the chance to prove she could change. But deep down, I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to let go of the betrayal. In the end, I decided to give it a try. Not for her, but for the kids. They deserved a shot at having their family back, even if it wasn't the same as before. But I made it clear that this wasn't an unconditional reunion. There would be rules, boundaries, and hard work ahead. "You can come back," I said finally, my voice firm. "But if I see even a hint of dishonesty, if you give me any reason to doubt you, it's over. No second chances." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Thank you, Mark. I promise I won't let you down. How do you think, guys? Am I did right? I just want to save my family." That weekend, she moved back in. The kids were over the moon, and for a moment, it almost felt normal again. But I knew better. This wasn't a fresh start. It was a fragile, patched up version of what we used to have. And I wasn't sure how long it would hold together. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Tell me what you think about that story. Have a good day, and bye.